This is Red Podcast, episode number 250. The book manuscript is done. Getting closer. I'm going to tell you about the process, where I am, what I've still got to go. That's coming up.
This is the Red Podcast. Here's your host, David Hooper.
David Hooper here, back with another book update. If you're brand new, right now I'm in the process of taking you through what's going on behind the scenes with the release of my upcoming book. It's been a while. It's not like I haven't been doing anything. In fact, I actually recorded an episode that didn't get edited because I was so busy working on this book. Let me get you up to speed on where I am right now, because now it's getting exciting. The last update, I talked about a songwriting saying that we have here in Nashville, and that is that good songs are written, great songs rewritten. And that's exactly what I did for the past month. Went through every single word of this book. Took a lot of words out. End to end, was left with 89,994. It's a big book. I think I was probably about 120, 130,000 on the first draft. So a lot of it has disappeared. That will be coming out, released in other elements, blog posts, podcast episodes. I may be doing an additional, ebook, probably not a full book, with some various other things that I think you're going to find important. It's good stuff, but it didn't fit this book. You may have had this experience. You buy a reissued album. Maybe these days you would go on Spotify, listen to a reissued album, and you'll see bonus tracks. You listen to those bonus tracks and think, man, that was actually a pretty good song. I know Michael Jackson, Thriller, the best-selling album, that's not a greatest hits album, of all time. There's some bonus tracks that did not make the album. They came out on the reissue, and they're great tracks. And you hear them and you think, man, why did this not make the album? Well, it's not because they weren't great. It's because they didn't fit into the album as a whole, the one that we know as Thriller. Same thing for me. I had about 120, 130,000 words. I wanted to have this thing really, really tight by the time I get it to you. I mean, the truth is, even at 90,000 words, this is still a big book, but I want to make it as easily accessible as possible. I want to make it tight. I don't want there to be any filler in it, and that's what I did this past month. I started with word one, went through every single part of this thing. My goal, it wasn't only to tighten it up. That was one of the big overarching goals. The very specific goals, though, I wanted to have a better flow, just like a podcast episode. I wanted to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I didn't want this to be a bunch of random thoughts just thrown in a book format. I wanted this to be something very specific. I wanted this to have clarity. It's like reading a novel. It all needs to go together. Same for a nonfiction book as well. I wanted it to be more personable. And one of the things that I realized that I was doing, and this is probably something that I picked up in school, it works for academic writing, very formal writing, but it doesn't work to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted it to be me talking to you, just like I'm doing right now. I wanted it to be personable, and when I was reading it, going through the edits, tightening it up, I imagined myself speaking it, because there is going to be an audiobook version of this, and instead of things like you will, I contracted it. You'll, would have, would have. I didn't have to do that, but I didn't want this to be another stuffy business book. You've got enough of those. I wanted this to be fun, as I said, accessible. If you're not reading it, absorbing it, putting the information to use, it doesn't matter how great the information is. I'm not doing my job. I wanted to add specific examples. When I was talking about overall big concepts, I wanted to give very specific examples, things that you could research and listen to on your own, or things that you're already aware of, so you could retain those specific examples. And again, start using those in your marketing, in your podcasting, actually putting this stuff to use. Let me tell you how I did this, how I organized my time. I had a deadline. I wanted to do this by the end of the month, and I used the Pomodoro method. This is what happens when I get serious. I set a timer to 25 minutes, start, go, 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 until the timer ends. And I use a program called Focus Time. If you're not familiar with the Pomodoro method, you can look it up, Pomodoro method. I will have this linked in the episode notes, redpodcast.com/250, links to the timer, Focus Time, and also more about the Pomodoro method. But basically what it is, again, 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. 25 minutes on, 5-minute break. You do as many of those as you can. And when I'm writing, the most I was able to do in a day, 9. 9 Pomodoros, let's say they're 30 minutes, about 4.5 hours of work, which doesn't sound like that much, but it's a lot of work when you're working this intensely. My goal at the beginning of the month, I wanted to do about 100 of these things. 100 Pomodoros, 3, 4 a day if I was consistently working every day. Doesn't seem much, 2,500 minutes. Comes down to about 42 hours of work. Very intense hours, though. When you're working, you're working. And it's something that you could do if you were very good at this. You could get a lot done. 1 month for what a lot of people would consider a full work week, 42 hours. You might not know this stat, though. Most CEOs, high-level executives, they consider themselves to get about 2 hours of work done per day. So I want you to imagine that. If you could really focus, and you can do that via the Pomodoro method, you could get a lot done, more than most CEOs. But these hours are going to be very, very intense. This is in addition to the other work that you've got to do. And the problem that I have when working on a project like this is that I like to have single focus. Switching modalities for me, very difficult. That's one of the reasons that I haven't done a podcast episode in a while. Even my other podcast, Build a Big Podcast, if you're into podcasting, and that's why you would want this book, because this is a podcast marketing book, you really need to check that out. Just go to bigpodcast.com to do that. Kind of slacked on that. I was traveling, doing a lot, writing, switching tasks all the time. It's not easy for me. You may be able to do it. I can't. I wanted to completely focus on it. That was not a luxury that I had, so I did my best by hitting the Pomodoro timer. 42 hours of actual writing. With that said, part of the energy drain, it's the behind the scenes. It's the other hours where you're not working. And for me, this book is almost 4 years in. There's lots of emotion around it. There's lots of self-reflection, lots of wordsmithing. Thinking, how am I going to say this? I've got this big concept here. I know it's important. How am I going to say it in a way that people are going to know what I'm talking about, be able to take that information, be able to use it, put it in action, and be able to help themselves and others with it? You may connect on this if you've got a podcast, you've got a blog, you're doing anything on your own. You don't have a partnership in your business. I talked about this before. I am not new to writing books. The first book that I released, it was around 99, maybe 2000, somewhere around there. Had a co-author. The book was almost done when I got it. It was a marketing book from a musician's point of view. I was a marketing guy in the music industry. Got with this dude. I think I could add something to this book. Let me take what you've got. Let me add a little bit more to it. Let's do this book together. I had a co-author. But that co-author was also a crutch for me. I've done several books since then. On some of those books, I've had ghostwriters to help me, kind of like a co-author. They don't get credit for it. It's very similar to podcasting. It's one of the things that I've talked about here. It's one of the things that I actually cover in the book. This podcast, if you've been with me for a while, it was a co-hosted podcast. We didn't do interviews, but I did have that crutch of a co-host. My current radio show, it's been on since 2005. Interviews every single episode. When I was doing radio in the 90s, when I was in college and post-college, I had music. That was a crutch. And it was very difficult for me to switch to doing a solo podcast. But here's what happened. You can't play music on podcasts, not legally. You got to clear everything. Wasn't interested in doing interviews because when you're interviewing people, they're the authority. I started that 2005 show, Music Business Radio, it's called. I started that as a way to market myself. And what ended up happening was people thought I was a DJ. Oh, you're a great DJ. No, man. That was for me to market myself. But everybody else was the star, not me. I was just the DJ, the talking head. So I knew when I got into podcasting, I didn't want to do interviews. That's why this show, like I said, we didn't do interviews, not at the beginning. I had a co-host, but when I had the co-host, she wanted to do one thing, I wanted to do another. And the old Red Podcast, what I call Red Podcast 1.0, it wasn't really a match for either one of us. It was okay. It wasn't bad. But she wanted to have something that was a complete match for her. I wanted something that was a complete match for me. And that's this for me. And the only way to do that is by yourself. But that's scary. You can't hide when it's just you. Can't blame the other person. If this show isn't well prepared, if it's not entertaining, if I don't educate you, that's on me. And the same thing with this book. And if you want to add even more pressure, this book is my foundation for this new stage in my career. I've been doing marketing for 20-something years, started in 1995. But I'm known for entertainment industry marketing, working with musicians, comics, models, actors, working on film and TV. I wanted to switch it over, get more focused. Start doing marketing via podcasting. Start working with people like you, people with a message to spread. So there's a little bit of pressure to me getting this book out. Not only is it a lot of work, it's that mental pressure. And I'm not sure how much that's affecting me, but to say that it's not affecting me, well, that wouldn't be true. I'm thinking about that. How will this book be received? So now what? Here's the deal. The manuscript is done, about 90,000 words. Sent it off to the two editors, the two main editors that I have working on it right now. I've sent it off to 3 test readers. I've got the original editor. She's taking a look at it for me. I've got 2 podcasters that I've worked with. One fairly established. She's got a couple of podcasts. The second, she's almost brand new. She just released her first few episodes within the last couple of months. I'm already getting feedback. I got 2, maybe 3 days off. Already back at it. The timeline, it's going to be tight. I've got a speaking engagement in about 10 weeks. I want it done by then. This month, I'll be finalizing the manuscript. I'm thinking about who's going to do the forward. I'm going to do an entire episode about that. I've got some interesting people that may be a good match for this. Got to reach out to them, sell them on the process. I'll be telling you more about that on future episodes of Red Podcast. Off to a line edit at that point. Once I get the forward, the manuscript, line edit, looking for misspellings, grammatical errors, layout after that. I'm already thinking about the title. Woke up yesterday morning. Great idea. I even did a mock-up cover. I was excited. Got shut down. It got shut down. The original title, this is actually on the proofs still, the ones that I sent to the test readers. That was rejected probably 2 years ago. No, you can't call that. So I had to let them know, hey, this is just a placeholder. That is not going to be the title of this book, but I think I've got one that will work. I'll be letting you know about that as we get further along into the process. Already thinking about the cover. I always do my own cover concepts for the most part. If you look at my last book, which is a music business book, Six Figure Musician, had a concept that I wanted to share. It was a concept that when you saw it, you were going to get what this book is about. With this podcasting book, I'm going to be doing the same thing. We'll update you on that process, maybe even get your opinion on it, because I've been around long enough to know that I do not have everything right. I've already had a couple of my titles rejected. I've had the initial manuscript that I had a couple years ago rejected. This is making me better. It's tough. You got to ask for feedback if you want to get better, because you don't know everything and you get too close to it. That's the scary thing for me. I've been working so much on this project, I may be too close to it. That's how I don't know if it's good, if it's bad, if it's ugly. Just got to trust it. I'm trusting that I've got the knowledge, trusting that I've got the experience, trusting that I got myself surrounded by good people who are going to give me that honest feedback. More coming. If you've got questions, you want to know more about this process, reach out to me. At David Hooper on Twitter is the best way to do that. If you want to make sure that you don't miss the process as it's happening, because I'm not going to go give you this revisionist process and tell you everything was great. This is the process as it's happening. I've got more episodes talking about the behind the scenes of this book launch, and they are available to you, and the future ones will be available to you at redpodcast.com. Go to redpodcast.com, subscribe. I've got links for you. Click the one that works for you. Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, however you get your podcast. I got a link for you. You click it. You subscribe. You never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening to Red Podcast. Thanks for sticking it out with me. I know I've been in and out and not very consistent over the last couple months. I'm going to get better. I promise you. I've just got to get through this book. If you want to hear me talk about podcasting specifically, if you got a podcast, you want a podcast, I got another podcast. It's at bigpodcast.com. I talk about the same thing that I'm talking about here, but specifically using podcasting as a way that you get your message out. So redpodcast.com, bigpodcast.com, wherever. I am there. Subscribe. You'll never miss an episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
You've been listening to Red Podcast. Never miss an episode. Subscribe now with your iPhone, Android, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.